What? Oh, I should talk now? Okay. Say hello. Now say goodbye. Now come back here. Okay, hello. Welcome to our channel. I'm Kit and this is Bear. He is actually a monkey, but I'll tell you a cute little story. My mother likes monkeys, or she liked monkeys and bears. So I got her this monkey. And when I brought it in to her and gave it to her, she goes, "Oh, you're a cute little bear." I said, "Mom, it's a monkey." So ever since then, his name has been Bear, hasn't it? Okay, and he's a cute little bear. And he agrees. And he's really more fun to look at than me. But anyways, welcome to our channel, or welcome back to our channel. If you're just joining us, then this is our second story in our series of the Garden of Estastar. There are approximately 65 books. They're not all finished. Like Lawrence, he wasn't finished. And there's no really order to read them in because they weren't written in any order. They were basically just written. And they were written when we were between the ages of, well, Korea was 9 when she started. When she wrote the first book that was called Estastar, the Garden, and the Beginning. Or the Beginning of Estastar, the Garden. That's what it was. I don't have that one. It's gone. Don't know where it's at. It disappeared. Also, there was 3 books that were made into a book form. And one was called The Beginning of Estastar, the Garden. And the other one was called I Live Two Worlds. And then there was one called Princes. Now, I have Princes because Princes I helped her write. So that one I do have. I don't have the original book, but I have the one that we turned in for school. Now, like I said, they were written by kids. We were from the age of 9 to present, but most of the stories were written in between the ages of 9 and 18 is when she wrote them. And I will be honest, she wrote the majority of them. And I just filled in the blanks after I got to know the characters and the way of life on the planet, because it's completely different than the way of life here on Earth. Completely. However, like I said, there is no order to how they're written. Now, there is a book written by Barbarana, or it's about Barbarana. And that one tells details, or it has some details, of how the planet differs from Earth and how Earth differs from the planet. And I might read that one next. This story is my favorite story, and it's called Patsy Lee. And it's got a subtitle called A Dream Come True. And the planet, you have to understand, is a lot different than Earth, or as they call Earth, the world. They have different beliefs, they have a different justice system, and they have a way, way different way of life. But this is a beautiful love story, or I think it is. It'll make you cry, laugh, and get mad. And it has 53 chapters, and it is a complete story. I don't know how many videos are going to be part of this, but like I did with Lawrence, the playlist will be added in the description of the videos so that you can keep up. It might end up with 20 videos. I don't know. It depends on the reading and how many chapters I can get in one video, because I can't really go over too much of an hour, or it'll take all day to upload, because I'm using my phone, not my computer, because I still don't know what I'm doing. I just want to tell the stories and share them with other people that might be interested. All right. Again, this is Patsy Lee. And again, this is my favorite story, because I love Patsy Lee. Patsy Lee is very sweet and adorable. And so is Danny. But Danny makes me mad. Danny makes everybody mad. Wait and see. All right, let's get started. Chapter 1. Princess Patsy Lee Humberg is my name. I am better known by many as just Patsy Lee. Entertainer, singer, songwriter. I was not always a princess. I never even dreamed of being a princess. Here is my story of how I went by decree from being just plain Patsy to Princess Patsy Lee. Trust me when I say it was not as simple as just marrying a Humberg. Come and see. I was born Patsy Lee Sanders, the 19th day of the 4th month of the 1st year cycle, 16th millennium, 2nd term of the high priest Louis Humberg, 9th cycle in the 32nd year. We lived in the village of Trey, in the kingdom of Atlantis. My mother was Karen Sanders. She had passed away when I was in the 12th level of classes. My father was John Sanders. I had one younger sister. Her name was Jolene. She was in the 9th level of classes when my mother passed away. After Mother died, my father just seemed to give up. He drank a lot and was out a lot. I and Jolene would take care of the house and ourselves, and we tried to take care of Father. He would come home most nights and strike out at Jolene and I for the house not being as clean as Mother would have kept it, or for meals not being ready for him. Most anything I remember he would strike out at. I remember the day very well. My regret was more for my little sister than it was for me. It had been almost 3 years passing of my mother's death when Father came home. As I said, I do not think I will ever forget that day or forgive my father for what he had done. Jolene and I were in the sitting room working on class studies when Father came into the house. He came in and went into the kitchen. I heard a loud crash. Jolene hurried off the floor and moved into the kitchen to check on Father. I ran after her. As she entered the kitchen, Father grabbed her by the hair. "Look at this kitchen. It is a mess. No one cleans around here. There is no food. Fixed," he said, and struck her across the face and onto the floor. She screamed and started to scoot away from him. He then reached to grab her hair, and I pulled her back up. I ran over to her. He then grabbed her hair and pulled her back up. I ran over to her and grabbed her away from him. When I did, he grabbed me and started slapping me. "Please, Daddy, we were doing our studies. We will fix you something to eat. Please," I cried as I was knocked across the kitchen. "You're nothing but a burden to me. One I shall be rid of this day." He then dragged me by my hair into the other room, and with bindings, he secured my wrists behind my back and placed a rope around my neck and secured me to the Thornton ring in the dining area of the house. He then did the same to Jolene. "Daddy, please no. Daddy, I will be good," she cried. "Silence," my father called and harshly moved over to me. Unbinding the rope, he placed the loose end around Jolina's neck. He took us out of the cottage and pushed us to the back of it, onto it. I could not believe where he had taken us, my own father. He drove to the Thornton Viking Lodge and jerked us out, pulling us inside. We both pleaded and begged him to not do this to us. Once inside, he pushed us to the floor and looked to one of the people there. "Get me a good price for them," he told them. A man came over to us. We tried to scoot away. However, it was no use. When 3 more came over, "Papers will need to be filled out for the girls," I heard another say to my father. Then we were unbounded. One of the men took Jolene and the other took me. We were taken into 2 different directions, and that would be the last time, for a very long time, I would see my little sister. Tears in my eyes, hurt in my heart that my own father was doing this. How could he have done this to his own children? I was placed in a cage where I laid and cried. A man came into the area where the cage was. He opened the door and reached in, jerking me out. "Where is my sister?" I asked him. "Silence. You may not speak, girl," he told me. I was scared. I really was not sure what was happening. He placed my hand shackled above my head. With a knife, he cut my dress off me. Then, to my horror, I was sprayed with water. A girl in a silver collar came in, and with a cloth and soap, washed my body, and again I was sprayed down. I cried uncontrollably. She then took a towel and dried me. As I hung there, I watched as my ankles were shackled, and then my wrists were set free, to only be rebound in chains. Then a metal collar was placed around my neck. I was led into another room and placed on my back and examined. Then I was turned over to my stomach and secured to the table. I could not move. My body was strapped down, my legs, my arms, and my neck. Then I felt a burn on my upper left thigh, and the most horrid smell. I screamed. That was a feeling one never forgets. I had been branded. The thought of my father doing this to me, I prayed for Odin to take his life. How could he? I felt regretful for Jolene. She was only in 9th classes, or she was only in 12th classes. I was in 15th. We both were so very young. I was kept bound and hand-fed for about the passing of 2 weeks, giving time for the brand to heal. When I was able to look to the brand, I discovered it was the Lily brand. That did give hope to one day I could be freed. I prayed Jolene received the same. Then it was against decree to brand any underage with a rose. I was thankful for that. After the brand healed, I was placed in a room with 5 cages and a mat on the floor. Each cage had a girl in it. We were positioned on 5 mats as a man stood before us with a whip, and a girl in a gold collar was on her knees beside him. "Greetings, girl.
For the next 6 weeks, you will be trained for the block cell. Listen closely to these rules. You will do no speaking unless spoken to. You will remain on your hands and knees as long as you are here. You will be learning positions, commands, decrees, and language. First position, follow as Linda does, he said, calling out heel. The one in the gold collar was on her knees. Her legs were close together. Her back was straight. Her wrists were behind her back. Her head was high. She positioned where we could all see her from the side. I placed my wrist as hers were behind my back and copied her position. He then snapped the whip, and she moved her hands to the back of her head, interlocking her fingers, and moved her head to the floor, keeping her back straight. I followed, as all did, and then to my surprise I screamed. I cried as I felt the whip fall on my back 3 times. Also, I heard the others cry out as I did. Now you know what the leather feels like, and you know I will use it. He snapped his fingers. Heel. He called out, and I, along with the rest, rised up to our knees. This is the position you will assume before any that is free. If you enter a room the free are in, or they enter a room you are in, he said, then called out the word stand. The girl raised to her feet. She placed her wrist crossed above her head, bent her left leg, resting it on the ball of her foot, and her right flat on the floor. I followed. Heel, he then ordered once again, and to a heel we all went. Contract, he then ordered. Then, while on her knees, opened her legs, placing her bottom to the floor and laid back. Then I did that. It hurt. It was not very comfortable at all. The next he called was discontract, and she laid forward. Her wrists did not move from how she had them, which was her fingers interlocked behind her back. Which was behind her back. Her right hand was around her left wrist, and her left hand around her right wrist, which was perfect to the command to lock, which was preferred to the command to lock wrist. That day we went over the positions. Later that night I was given a bowl of porridge. It was bland and a bowl of water. We were given no silverware and had to eat with our hands. The next day, as the cage door was open and we were to crawl to the mats and heel, the same man stood in front of us with the girl beside him. From this day forth your decrees are Thornton decrees. You will obey only those decrees, which are as followed. If you are in default of the decree, you will receive the whip. You will address all three as master and mistress. You will seek permission. If you are to speak, you will eat only what is given to you. You own nothing. You have no name. As of right now, you have no owner. You have no family. You are mere property of the kingdom of Atlantis, village of Trey. As of right now, this moment, you are owned by Count Tellus. That is until the day of your sale. You will withstand any treatment any that are free wish to be given to you. You will not deny any request they have. You are nothing. You live from this day on to serve others. You are to be pleasing at all times. You will not question any free person. There will be other decrees for you to learn that your owners will give you. He said, I held there, listening to what he had to say. Stand, he then said. We all stood. Form a line. Now form a circle and walk. He said. I and all obeyed, keeping our wrists crossed above our head and up on the balls of our feet. We were made to walk in a circle. If we allowed our heels to touch the ground, we would receive a strike to our bottoms with the whip. I received the strike twice. Then we were to walk from one end of the room to the other, and he would call out, heel, toe, and strike. Each of us with the whip on the back of the legs or the bottom. At night my legs hurt, and I had whelps from that whip. He would strike at each change of command. We were made to jump and run, and if not running fast enough, was struck with the whip. We went through all commands, positions, and decrees every day. The man came into the room and opened the cages as we all crawled to the mats to heal. We watched as a woman came in. There were 3 of them. One came over to me, or 5 of them. One came over to me. In her hand she held a whip. In each of their hands a whip was held. I started to become frightened. I will ask you questions. When struck, you will answer, the man said. What is your brand? He asked, and I heard the others start to cry out. Then I felt a sting on my back. The Lily Master. I cried out. What is your status? He then asked. A Dynamaster, I cried out when I felt the strike of the whip. What is your name? He then asked. A Dyna has no name, Master. I cried once. I was struck. I had noticed that one of the girls called out the answer before she was struck, and she was ordered to kneel and receive 3 extra strikes. I made sure to only answer after I was struck. What is your duty? He then asked. To be pleasing, I cried. Once I was struck. What can be done with you? He then asked. Whatever one of free wishes, I cried out. Once struck. I healed their crying. I did not really understand this. I had done nothing wrong. Take them, the man said. Hand and knees, come. The woman instructed me, and as if I was a household pet, I was to crawl the length of the leash. This was also taught during that time. I went with her to a small room with a bath and a sink. She removed the shackles from my body and then had me to step into the bath. My back burned from the strikes of the whip. She handed me a cloth and a soap and instructed me to bathe. Then she herself washed my hair, instructing me out. She dried me and set me in a chair, where she brushed and dried my hair. Then I was instructed to stand, and she sprayed a sweet scent perfume all over my body, then instructed me to heal once again. My wrists were then rebound with binding fabrics, and I watched as she placed a slight restrainer over my eyes. I then felt the leash being placed back on the collar, and the tug from it. I moved onto my hands and knees and as followed, as I could, to the tugs of the collar. We walked for some time. Then I heard a door open. "Heel," I heard her say. I quickly obeyed. I heard others speaking. It seemed I was in a room filled with people. I assumed I was to be sold. "Kneel." A order was given, and I felt the sting of the whip. I cried out and obeyed. Then each position was called, and before I could assume it, I felt the whip. Each time I quickly obeyed. I was not disobeying. I could not understand why I was being struck. They did not give me time to react before striking. "Stand," was the last command called out. I felt my wrist attached to something, and then my arms being pulled above my head. "Let us start with this one. She acts the quickest to one first bid." I heard someone say, "1 gold." I cried out as I felt the sting of the whip to my bottom. I then heard 2, and again the sting came to my bottom. After each call of bid, I was struck. Then after about 5 more stings, the last, there was only 2 male voices, 12. The bid was called, and I felt the strike. "Please, no more, please," I cried and was struck again. "Silence, girl," I was told, and again struck. 25. "Enough is enough," I heard a voice say. 18. "Damn, James, you really want that girl," I heard another laugh. 25. I heard another repeat. "Going?" he then said. "Going?" he repeated. "Gone," I then heard. I was thankful for the strikes ended. I felt my arms lowered, and I moved to my hands and knees. "Come, little one," I heard the male's voice that ended the bidding say. I moved to the tug of the leash. I then felt the leash and the collar taken off, and a gentle tug on my upper arm, and I moved with this man I knew was now my owner. Chapter 2. I remained blindfolded, however my wrists were no longer shackled, and I was led and ordered to heel. Then I felt a movement. I was in a carriage or wagon. I was not sure of which it was. We traveled for some time. I remained silent. No one said anything. I was not sure how many were there. I knew the man who had purchased me. I was healed at his feet. Then the movement had ended. I felt a hold on my arm and was gently pulled to my feet and led out of the carriage. "Take her to my study. I will meet you there," I heard the one who owned me say. I then felt another grip to my upper arm and moved with the person. I walked a little before the one that held my arm spoke. "Heel," is all he said. Then I heard a door close. Then not long after, open again. I felt the tug of the restrainer, and I slowly opened my eyes. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the light. I looked to a very nice, slender man. He had dark hair and dark eyes. In his hand was a whip. He snapped it. I immediately moved into a kneel and received 3 lashes from the whip. I cried and remained still. Heel, I was then ordered. Crying, I raised into the position. I watched as he laid the whip on the desk, and he looked to me with a soft smile. What was the name you were last known by? First name only, he asked me. Patsy, master, I replied, immediately after hearing the question. Then you will hereby answer to that name. He then said, What level of classes are you in? He then asked, 15th level, master. I replied quickly. Your grade average? He then asked. 4, master. Exam 5, master. I replied. Classes repeated. He then asked. None, master. I replied. Very good. I am James Millstone, master of Cumberland Mills, Kingdom of Atlantis. At the first of the week, you will be attending Atlantis Education Center. Your finished assignments, papers, and reports from classes will be placed on my desk daily. After classes, you will have an hour of study. Then you will clean the 4 offices on this floor. Afterwards, you will have another 4 hours of study, or until lights out, which is at 10 passing. You will awake at 6 passing. Candace is my courtesan. You will obey her as if she is free. If you have any problems and wish to speak with me, you may, he said as a man entered. He waved his hand to the man. You may stand and go with John. He will take you to your cell. He then told me. I was not sure if I was to speak or not. I did not want to be whipped again, so I stood and moved over to the man. He waved me out of the office. Then he led me down the hall to some stairs and up them, then to another hall with 6 doors. Standing before one of the doors, he opened it and pushed it open. This is your cell. Enter. He then said, and as I did, I heard the door close and a lock turned. I looked about the room. It was beautiful. When the master had said cell, I thought of a Thornton holding, not an actually sleeping chambers. There was a canopy bed with curtains, a dresser, dressing table, a desk in the corner, and a shelf. There was carpet on the floor and 2 other doors. I opened one that went into a large closet. In the closet were 2 dinner dresses, one of blue and the other pink. The other door led into a wash area that had another door on the other side. I stepped through and opened it. To my surprise, there was another girl laying across the bed. She looked up to me and smiled. Forgive me, I meant not to disturb you, I told her. It is all right, she said, sitting up. I am Sandra. Welcome to Cumberland's Mills, she said. Thank you. I am Patsy, I replied. Patsy? I heard a soft female voice call out. I turned and the female in a long dress and a gold collar stood behind me. I moved to my knees and to a heel before her. I noticed Sandra moved quickly off the bed and done the same. She smiled to the 2 of us. Both of you relax and stand up, she said. I stood up and Sandra moved back to her bed to sit. I am Candace. I see you have met Sandy. There are 5 young Dinas here. In the morning you are to be ready by 10 passing to go out. We need to purchase you clothing and items for classes. Breakfast is at 7 passing. When not in classes, lunch is at 12 and dinner is at 6. Do not be late or you will receive the whip from our master. Tonight you will be fed in your room. Back to your studies, Sandy, she told Sandra. Yes, my mistress, Sandra replied, and I followed Candace back into what was my cell, or room. She motioned for me to sit on the bed. I looked up to her. You are to keep this room clean and in order. You are allowed out in the garden any time you have no chores or studies. She began to speak, telling me the decrees of the house and what was expected of me. That following day, she took me shopping. I was bought different kinds of dresses and such items I would need, as in ties for my hair and shoes, stockings, and materials for classes. Some of the things I even got to pick out. The next day, I was enrolled in classes. I and Sandy were in the same level and had most the same classes, so I stayed with her most of the time. She was Rose branded. There were 3 other girls. Tammy, she was Lily and in the 16th level. Patty, she was Rose and in the 18th level. Then there was little Susanna. She was in 6th level. She had a Lily brand as well. James Millstone owned the Cumberland Millstone Yard. The stones he produced were for the walls and streets of the kingdom and villages and towns of the Sultan. They were decorated stones, not your everyday gravel or rocks. He would take the different kinds of stones, mill them together to make the large bricks for the walls and the smaller ones for the streets. The stones were used to fix the streets and the walls. Also, some buildings were made from the stones. James produced James was a very well-respected man at Atlantis and actually all over the garden. This I did not know at this time. Now, I never actually went to the mill, for I was one of the house Thorntons, and I, with the 4 others, took care of the house and the master's wishes. To give you an idea of a normal day for me, I would wake at 6 passing, dress, and by 7 passing, be down for breakfast. Then after breakfast, it was off to classes. Classes started at 9 and ended at 2. I would then go home, and for an hour I would do my after-class assignments. Then I would clean the 5 offices on the 2nd floor. James would get home around 5 passing. At 6, I would make my way to the dining area for dinner, then return to what Candace called my chores. I would finish them around 8 passing, which, as I mentioned, was the cleaning of the offices. I would dust the furniture, sweep and mop the floors, and restock the bars, brush down the sofa and chairs, clean the woodwork, wash the windows, and make sure all was spotless. This was done in each office. When I would return to my room and study until 10 passing, when lights were out. That was normal for the first day of the week through the 5th day of the week. The 6th day, we all cleaned the yard of the manor. The garden we would trim and pull weeds and such. At 7 passing, we had breakfast. At 9 passing, we all met in the yard with Candace, and we worked until 12. Then we would have lunch. We were then to study for an hour. Then it was back out to the yard until 5. Then we would get cleaned up and have dinner. After dinner, we had the rest of the day until lights out to do as we would like. We could be in the garden or the setting room. On the 7th day of the week, we were allowed to relax. At times, we were taken to the Atlantis Park. and other areas depending on Candace and what she had planned. Every other 6th day of the week, we would only spend half the day in the yard. As James had gatherings, I never knew what they were for. I did not know what they were for at the time. The older of us would attend the gatherings and serve the guests. There were also 8 other courtesans there, all rose-branded, that entertained at the gathering. At first I was told I was not old enough, so I had to be in my room during this time. And study. One thing about James Millston, he was very nice. He was strict and stern. However, it was more so as a father and not as an owner of the Thornton. Okay.